What is good, guys? Welcome back. Today we're going to be continuing on from our last discussion of small bases. This time we're going to be looking at the smaller bases of Providence Ridge and Cascade Hills. Afterwards, we'll recap on what I think are the most sustainable of the smaller bases in each map. Come and dine with us, and we'll talk all about it.
What's up, guys? Y'all are awesome.
Alright guys, so this will be the last of our review and guide of small bases. Now I decided to do both at the same time since Providence Ridge only has 2 bases. Now let's not forget the main goal of these base reviews is to determine ways of becoming self-sufficient with 6 survivors, or what I would consider to be the minimum amount of survivors for one to be self-sufficient in any proposed base.
I think it's fair that your guests also know what your formula is for each base. Perhaps you should start there. Junior? So from what I remember, you advise that one have at least 5 survivors before moving out the tutorial home.
Exactly. For starting out a community, I recommend one starts out with computers, gardening, and medicine, or chemistry as a close fourth. Before moving out, however, I'd highly recommend one at least have chemistry and utilities, specialized into electrical. That way, one can create a still and a solar array for base-wide water and power, and craft their own fuel reserves as a result.
You also said that one should have at least 1 food facility modification such as fertilizer or the compost bin. Additionally, you recommend having the signal antenna or ideally the signal booster.
Correct. The signal antenna is craftable, though, for 5 scraps of circuitry and 225 units of crafting parts, which is what this review will demonstrate just for the purpose of showing the sustainability with as little advantages as possible. Brief side note before we get started, I will not be covering the container fort, Prescott Fire Station, lumber mill, M&M Distributing, and Lock and Key self-storage, as those are covered in my guide for large base management.
So let's get started in Providence Ridge with Rusty Rosie's. It only requires 4 survivors and costs 1,000 units of influence. It has 2 large slots and 4 usable small slots. It comes with a built-in kitchen and a watch post. One of the large slots comes with a clearable auto shop, and 2 of the small slots have 1 clearable bedding area each. The watch post is also a fuel reserve that one can empty for 15 extra units of fuel.
Now, the second large slot is where things may get a bit difficult. Although this onion would say that 6 survivors is the minimum for a self-sustaining base, Rusty Rosie's large slot has a failed Clio drop, which will require either 1 programming specialization from computers or the use of 7 labor units. Now, unless one has a character trait that gives them an extra labor unit or takes on the programming specialization, they will need to recruit an extra body just to free up some space. Which is what I had to do. But anyways, all preparations aside, with each of the small slots cleared out, one can place their workshop, infirmary, outdoor still, and hydroponics.
And as for the large slots, it would seem that one has options. One will be used for the solar array, while one could possibly put up a farm for extra food, or meds, or...
Well, hold up, Mascara. Let's not forget that this base does not come with any bedding amenities once the small slots have been cleared up. So 3 bedding outposts will be required to suffice for everyone. Not to mention, the infirmary will require 2 med outposts to break even. So pretty much, a signal antenna will be required, but this setup won't allow one to break even on ammo and materials. So instead, one can install barracks, which will create 4 beds, relieving 2 bedding outposts. 1 outpost will then go toward materials, and the other toward ammunition.
Yeah, fair enough, London. But I guess the only downside to this setup would be an unsubstantial growth in food, as you would also just break even, or come out with 0.25 units gained per day, considering that you only have a fertilizer mod and aren't installing a signal booster. But I guess if one manages to find a compost bin and signal booster, this process only gets better.
Yes, but it seems like the trader that holds such mods does not want to appear that much anymore. It's mostly independence traders. But if one has a trader as their leader, they can easily gain access to any type of trader except for the network and red talent traders. But carrying on, let's discuss the Weston Builder supply base. It also only requires 4 survivors and 1,000 units of influence. Similarly, it also has 2 large slots, one of which is occupied by a failed Cleo drop. However, the base also comes with 6 small slots, 2 of which have sheltered beds.
So I can immediately see that your 4 small slots can be accommodated with a workshop, infirmary, a still, and hydroponics. Now let me guess, you wouldn't recommend a farm, would you? You would say to follow the setup of the old base, right?
Well, no, actually. Remember, this base has 6 small slots, and there isn't even a watch post to take away from one's ammo reserve. So I would say this would merit having a second hydroponics to supplement food, and since there is no kitchen or morale boosting facility, one can add a latrine.
But wait, if you have no bedding amenities and a level 2 infirmary, then all of your outposts consist of 3 bedding and 2 meds. What about the material costs of your hydroponics?
Well, our second large slot will serve as a staging area, which covers all material costs to 0. But since I also have a workshop installed, this brings my materials to a surplus of 1. With this in mind, I can even upgrade my infirmary to the 3rd level, since its material costs at that level will be covered by the staging area. Now, I only place a latrine because none of my survivors have a cooking skill, but the kitchen may be a better option if one has the skill. However, one can experience substantial growth in food and can consequently feed their still for fuel reserves and offensive measures. Meanwhile, materials are being gained every day, and meds and ammo simply break even.
So it seems that between these 2 bases, the Weston Builder supply is the superior one, just based on the sustainability alone. Though defensively, Rusty Rosie's has a slight edge due to there being a built-in watch point. In addition, this aids with morale, as survivors won't feel so worried without a watchtower.
Perfectly summed up. But I would still take the Weston Builder supply since our goal is sustainability and growth. Though with a signal booster and a survivor with the cooking skill, one can increase their capacity for morale.
Well, I see your point in that regard, but it would seem that both bases are delicate in their own way. One in morale, and the other in sustainability and growth. But alright, London, let's move on to Cascade Hills. There's the bridge fort, the church on the hill, and the corner office.
Alright, we'll start with the bridge fort. It costs 500 units of influence and only requires 4 people.
I wager this base probably won't do very well based on the other 500 influence bases. But let's see. It comes with 1 large slot for a solar array and 4 small slots. One comes with a set of sheltered beds and the rest are open. However, I also noticed that there are 2 watch posts which will soak up 2 units of ammo. But otherwise, there is not much else to this base.
This is true. There are 3 parking spaces, but no bedding amenities or morale bonuses or built-in facilities. Sure, it does have only 2 entrances and good defense, but there is literally nothing else to this base. With 6 survivors, all bedding amenities will have to be outsourced, and 2 medication outposts will take up the rest. So a signal antenna is a necessity with 6.
And I don't think 5 survivors, which is your minimum recommendation, would make any difference anyway. I guess this base would be a bust, since ammo would be at a deficit of 2. Meanwhile, food will remain at an unsubstantial growth with only the fertilizer mod and seeds. The compost bin may help, but even with a signal booster, one will still be at a deficit for ammo.
Nice critique, Mascara. So moving on, we'll cover the church on the hill. It costs 1,000 influence and requires 5 survivors. Now, the base comes with a large slot and 5 small slots.
Well, that sounds more promising than the bridge fort. At least now you can add a 5th small facility for morale. Plus, the church has its own passive morale bonus due to the scenery. But London, I'm also noticing that there is a watchtower, which will soak up a unit of ammunition.
Well, you're close, but you'll notice that the watch post requires repairs before it is active and will consequently have no passive effects. Otherwise, the best way I have found to become sustainable at this base is to have a workshop, a level 2 infirmary, an outdoor still, and hydroponics. The last small slot can go towards sheltered beds, but not upgraded. That way, one only has to outsource 2 of their outposts to beds, 2 for meds, and 1 for food in order to supplement one's food output.
Ooh, I see. And with the watchtower left disabled, everything else should break even. The only detriment to this is that morale will suffer due to there being no watchtower. Otherwise, one will require a signal booster to have the watchtower and compensate with an ammunition outpost. But let's move on to the last one, the corner office.
This base also requires 1,000 units of influence and 5 survivors. It likewise has 5 small slots and 1 large slot, so the makeup can be similar to that of the church on the hill. However, the one crucial difference is the active watch post, which is a tax on ammunition. Unlike the church, it comes active, but this does not necessarily mean that the base is not sustainable with 6 survivors, but
instead will require a slight switch up in outposts. Instead of having a food outpost, one simply requires an ammunition outpost since food can break even with a hydroponics, fertilizer, and seeds. It's far from ideal, but sustainable nonetheless. Additionally, there is a kitchen for one that has the cooking skill or the correct modification to increase morale. Since this base is so similar to the church on the hill, which would you say comes out on top?
Well, let's see. Both have the same number of small and large slots. Both have the same parking, but the amenities are slightly different and have an effect on overall sustainability. The church on the hill is much more spacious, allowing one to take on sieges with much greater ease, even if there is a juggernaut. Comparing to the corner office, it is much more cramped and could be quite dangerous to one's survivors if a juggernaut manages to get inside, which would be very simple for them actually. Also, the church on the hill essentially gives one the choice of whether they wish to have a watchtower or not. Meanwhile, the corner office does not, and demands one supplement for it, but at least will allow a morale boost. Lastly, both bases are relatively central, although in technical terms, the church is more central, while the corner office has more of a north deviation. Not that significant of a difference though, but I'd still give the church on the hill the greatest advantage.
It would seem that the issue of both bases can be solved with a signal booster, provided all things remain the same. The church on the hill will require an ammo outpost, and the corner office will require a food outpost. So both can ultimately have the same performance. But at least the church dominates in defense and has a passive morale boost due to scenery. But now to summarize between the 2 maps, in Providence Ridge, you valued the Weston Builder supply over Rusty Rosie's. In Cascade Hills, you put the bridge fort last, the corner office in second, and the church on the hill for first.
Exactly. Now don't forget, I am aware that others will have their own means of becoming self-sustaining in the Nightmare Zone. However, These onions were simply relaying our method that one may find beneficial for surviving with the bare minimum of advantages, lack of boons, and modifications that are really just left up to RNG, or luck and chance. Otherwise, those who have a trader for a leader can have all of their problems sorted out rather quickly with their trade depot. But this onion doesn't necessarily like taking the easy way out on things, as any fool with minor skills can pull that one off. But if one can survive with bare minimum, they can survive the maximum, even with the disadvantages in their corner. Otherwise though, that is all this onion.
And this onion.
That is all these onions have to say. Thank you very much for stopping by, guys, and I will see you in the Lethal Zone.
Bye, guys. I really hope you come back to see the Lethal Zone.